Sands of Time. No upgrades, no damage. Steadily moving towards our showdown to get rid of this nightmare of sand and hourglasses. This is the 9th slice. And there's only one after this. And you need to be careful here as well, because you can take damage on one of those jumps on that earlier bit. I had to do this twice. I don't even know how I took damage. It was very weird. I even watched the video back and it frustrated me, but what can you do? This sword is absurd though. You might have noticed we don't have a dagger to do the sand manipulation, but we don't need one because this sword is very good. It kills everything pretty much in one hit if you hit them. The problem is the prince has a tendency to kick, and if he kicks, you'll get fucked. But you might have seen a manipulation in this video and maybe the last video. I only noticed this in some of the later fights with the AI, but if you attack the enemies when they're blocking and they do that really quick counter where they attack you, they tend to do a vertical slash coming down. So when you attack someone and they block, if you move off to the side, a lot of the times you will slip out of the range of the attack and dodge it naturally, and you won't have to worry about any of the reprisals. But we're faced here with more bats and more platforming, and this is another one of those moments where, you know how I've mentioned in this game that the platforming is quite organic, and that a lot of the times it doesn't quite seem all that obvious where you're supposed to go, because it's not some giant glowing industrial sign saying, "Over here, dickhead, have you not played a game in the last 25 years? I really appreciate this area climbing the tower, although it is quite tricky and there is a tough fight waiting for us at the top. But this is the bat strategy. You've seen me do it multiple times now. Wait for the bats to converge on you, strike them twice. The first one is to kill them, the second one is for safety. And then wait for them to fly off, and then they'll come back and converge on you again. And then once that confluence has happened, you can wreck them and get on with your life. And that's pretty much what you do with the bats. I think there's 2 or 3 more encounters with them coming up, and it's a little frustrating, but I'm sure you'll be fine. And in the previous video, we were talking a little bit about Elden Ring, which I was talking about the no-hit runner Gino and his eye for efficiency when it comes to watching other people play and doing strategies that are suboptimal, and wondering why they do that, because the whole point of that genre is to do it in the most effective way possible. And I went on to say that one of the reasons that I don't really like that genre too much is because a lot of it aspires to do things in the most optimal way possible. And it's that wonderful difference, isn't it, of I watch that stuff and I don't really, outside of how impressive it is the first time, I don't find it that engaging, because there's this wonderful law of diminished returns with anything. And I started that conversation by saying it reminds me of No Damage. And the reason I said that is because when No Damage first came out, when it was like No Hurt and whatnot, even you could say No Miss in the arcades if you want to go further back, that's the type of thing that when you first come across it, it's insane. I remember when I first saw Godfather Dictator do No Damage on Ninja Gaiden on Master Ninja, and I just couldn't understand how anybody could do it, because at that time I was doing YouTube walkthroughs on the hardest difficulty, I was challenging myself in games, but I wasn't doing things like that. It never really occurred to me to do it. He was one of the people that motivated me to push myself in that direction. So at the time when I saw it, I just thought it was madness. I thought it was just alien and just forbidden, like some kind of strange break in reality. And, you know, later on, little did I know that I'd become friends with him and, you know, and all the stuff that has transpired since then, and I'd start doing it myself and I'd start doing it to all kinds of games, but the first time you see it, it blows you away. The 50th time you see it, it just becomes part of the family, doesn't it? It just becomes part of everything else that you're doing. And that's one of the biggest tragedies, I think, of the whole thing. Like, that Gino guy has got multiple no-hits of Elden Ring on his channel with multiple weapons, and they're all really cool. But it's that feeling, isn't it, of once you see it, you've seen it. And it's that thing that's really frustrating if you love doing it, because, I mean, it still has legs, let's be fair. It's not that old. It's still getting good views for him, thankfully, because he's doing great things and people appreciate it because there is an audience, you know. Elden Ring had the biggest sales figures of many games for a long time. So there's clearly people there willing to engage with it. But I can't help but feel like if it was something else, it would be bigger. And that's the sad part, isn't it? You know, especially when you see this divide between challenge running and speed running. There seems to be a lot of attention that goes towards speedrunning, and it seems to get ignored when in the challenge running circles. which I think is an interesting divide. And depending on where you sit on that divide, it'll probably depend on how you feel about it, but it seems like speedrunning is the attractive challenge run that people like to watch, whereas doing things like no damage and no hit, I think it has less of an appeal. And I've seen no damage go from being something legitimately, just spellbinding, to it having to change into something else to kind of be relevant. And you see this all the time, don't you? If you don't continue to adjust, if you don't continue to change, you stagnate and you get left behind, and then you're just a ghost of past grandeur. Whereas no hit comes from no damage in many ways. It's just no damage under a different restriction. And the funny part is, which I didn't realise with the no hit stuff, I thought no hit meant taking no damage as well, which is not true. It's literally just don't get hit by the enemies, because they take fall damage and they take like all kind of self damage. They do a lot of things. And the funny thing about that for me personally, oh, by the way, guys, I did not think dropping down here would allow me to do it without taking damage, so I was scared to do it. But it turns out you're fine. It's the way the game wants you to go. So don't hesitate there. You can do that really quickly. But I just did not think that that was going to be safe. And it is. But the funny thing to me is, 10 years ago, I say 10 years ago, no, it was, wasn't it? Damn, time flies. Jesus. 10 years ago, I was doing no damage runs that have no hit stipulations, pretty much. Because I didn't count fall damage, and I didn't count poison damage. I only counted damage directly from an enemy. And little did I know that this genre was going to bust up and take some of those elements and go hard with it. And if I was Darkside Phil right now, this would be the point where I tell you that I invented no hit runs, because I'm an arrogant asshole, but of course that's not even remotely close to being true. It's just like anything else, isn't it? It's just a happy coincidence. But I see those runs, and I see them getting the attention that they're getting, and it makes me wonder how long it's got. And it makes me wonder if the people that are doing them are thinking the same thing. Because one thing you noticed, and I do apologise guys if you want me to talk about Prince of Persia right now, but we're literally climbing a massive ladder, and up here's a fight. And it's a fight against Twin Bladers, Hammer Bros, and I think that's pretty much it. And we do the same thing here. Our sword is so strong, all we need to do is whack them once, and then get rid of them. Easy life, right? But just be careful, because if you get hit, you have to do the climb again. I don't know if my game was just not checkpointing correctly, but there's some fights where it's just like, what are you doing, PS2? Jesus, I want to die. But I noticed, and I'm sure you noticed as well, that there was a time, especially on Twitch, where it was very cool to do no-hit runs on Dark Souls, and it was a leapfrog into bigger and better things, and a lot of people took it. And I didn't see it for that at first, because I just thought these people really liked the game. Because I really liked the game. And you do that, don't you? You know, when you watch somebody else play a game, you kind of push your love on that person and assume that you feel the same. You rarely do, but there's just a part of us that like to do that. And then when you start talking to them, you realise, hang on a second here, we have very different opinions on all of this stuff. This is kind of interesting. So I assume these people just really loved it. And then I watched one of their streams where they literally said the only reason they're doing this is because of growth. Like, they were doing it, they didn't even want to do it, they didn't even like the game. And, you know, I'm not going to say that when I'm doing challenge runs I love the games all the time, because there's moments during challenge runs where I fucking hate the games and I wish they didn't exist. But that's just the mental toll that it takes on you when you do something difficult. You bang your head against it, it's frustrating, and in that moment you lash out, you know? As long as you're not lashing out at your kid, it's alright. This is another one of those natural pieces of level design. It's kind of difficult to know where to go there unless you're really paying attention. And that's where Prince of Persia really shines, because it trusts you that you can navigate its world. And if you're good enough, you will. There's also some bats coming up here. This is probably my least favourite bat encounter in the game. It's just fucking annoying. Needlessly stupid and annoying. But wait for them to come back. They actually despawned then, and I don't know why they did that. And I think I'm just going to skip them now, because fuck those dudes. Stupid bats. But you saw a lot of people doing no hit for clout, and then there's the people that were doing it because they love it and they've kind of stuck around. And one of the things I like the most about that Gino guy is he was doing that shit back on Dark Souls 3. He was doing it when no one was watching, you know? I got a couple of people that recommended his videos and I watched them and I was like, this guy's crazy, because that type of stuff to me it's just a different level. I'm pretty good at Souls games and I can do some crazy things, but I can't do what those guys do. I can't do single segment. It's just not fun to me. So I go the other way, you know. I try to make as many restrictions and as many stupid things as I can to make it so that the one thing I do is an absolute appalling nightmare the whole time, but it's only about 3 minutes. You know, I can do a horrible thing for 3 minutes and I can bang my head against it for hours, but the idea of doing something less horrible for much longer is just a bridge too far. And here we have the big fight, guys, the fight that you're probably going to have the most trouble on in the game. And it's not even your fault, it's a combination of bad collision, terrible geometry, and detection on an enemy that just does not want to cooperate. Oh, and also, did I mention you have to fight like 40 of these guys? And the strategy is quite simple. You're going to probe them with the dagger by pressing triangle, and then depending on if you hit, you are going to attack them with the sword. If they block it, you want to back away. If they don't block it, you want to kill them. And that's all you do. And the best way to space this room is to circle away from them, wait for one of the monsters to go in front of you, and stab him. And then what will happen here is if you get in front of them, you can safely roll without mantling anybody. And you can always be away from their attacks. And all you do, circle the room, wait for somebody to teleport in front of you, stab him with the knife. If you hit him, kill him. If you don't, move on, and just keep doing it. And this is it. I got this fight in about 20 minutes. It's not a difficult fight, it's a shit fight, is what it is. But your sword is so powerful, and as long as you manipulate the room correctly and you hit confirm with the dagger, it's very safe. But this is the room I talked about with the pillars, guys. Do you notice how there's some pillars in the center? If you climb on those pillars, the enemies pacify. And what you can do is you can bait them near the pillars, you can jump on the pillar, and then you can whack them with your sword. And if you're really struggling here and you don't want to deal with this, you can do pillar shenanigans and have lots of success. But I ended up having to do this twice, because when I went to drop a save state before the vizier for the fight on the final boss, I accidentally loaded save state, and it put me in this fucking room. And I had to do this fight again. So I was really, really salty about that, but fortunately, I was able to get it. And it's all because of this strategy. If you stand your ground, you can do it, but you'll have to hold block the whole time. And I'm trying to do this without blocking, so you won't see me block at all. I'm just going to use movement, I'm going to use spacing, and because I've done this fight for a decent amount of time, I've got an idea of what's expected of me. And the only real issue is collision. Collision and camera. Sometimes the camera gets really close, the enemies will teleport in front of you and they'll do an attack from off screen and you'll just walk into it because you can't see it. And you can't really complain too much because this is an early game and you're fighting against those kind of archaic concepts. If this game came out now, the camera here and the movement would be completely different and it'd be a lot easier. Also, I tried to attack people through geometry like that and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But always try to dodge away if you see them attacking. The dodge can be really good for that. Never engage when two are together because one will always attack. You definitely want to pick your punishers here and do not overextend. And be very careful trying to roll when you're near your opponent because if the auto detection makes you jump on him, he'll probably counter you. But we did see earlier, didn't we? We saw earlier that you can jump over these men. I don't know what I did then to do that because I'm certain he counters jumps. That's why I'm not doing it. If this guy didn't counter jumps, he'd be free because you can kill him with this weapon in one hit. And I checked the IGN walkthrough from this from 10 years ago. It's a written walkthrough on their website. And it's so funny, dude. It reminds me of those shitty primer guides you used to get sometimes where the strategy would be, this next room has lots of enemies. Good luck. Like, what? What kind of strategy is that, primer? Come on, guys, what the fuck are you playing at? And admittedly, I've talked about Geno and Elden Ring when I should have been talking strategy perhaps to some people, but I hope the video speaks for itself. You know, a lot of people just put videos up and don't have any commentary. Whereas I'm hoping that this gives you something to engage yourself with, and hell, maybe you're not even watching it, maybe you just listen to me talk bollocks for an hour. Which is cool. But they're being so blocky right now. I think this is the end of the fight too. I think there's only two guys, but they're being super blocky. We'll see now. Does anybody spawn in? Yeah, this is it. This is over. We've won. Eventually, he's not going to block. And that's it, guys. That's the end of the hardest fight in the game. Thank you for watching, and you take care now.